Hello, I'm Somi Arian. I'm a tech philosopher, author, filmmaker, and the founder of InPeak, a platform where entrepreneurs and business professionals come to network, learn together, and stay ahead of the curve in the fast paced world of emerging technologies like blockchain, Web3, NFTs, AI, automation, and so much more. Our guest on today's podcast is known as Zeneca 33, a well respected NFT influencer who I dare say is pretty much loved by everyone in the space. Zeneca is extremely wise and zen. He keeps our feet on the ground when the prices are shooting up to the moon in the bull markets, and he lifts us when we are in the depth of the bear market. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with Zeneca, and we mostly covered topics that he hasn't normally covered on other podcasts. Zeneca also has his own podcast and YouTube channel, and he appears on Overpriced JPEGs every other week. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Zeneca 33. Before we start, I also wanted to tell you about Athletic Greens, our sponsor for today's show. I started taking their AG1 daily supplement because I work 14 to 15 hours a day and I need a way to stay at my peak performance. Now, I've been taking it for several months at this point and I love it. I definitely feel more mentally alert and I seem to be more energized during my workouts. Honestly, it's no wonder that Athletic Greens has over 7,000 five-star reviews. I wanted to share this with you because I personally have been loving it. To make it easier for you, Athletic Greens is also going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Somi. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/Somi to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. We also have another sponsor today. Meta Brew Society, founded by Holger Manwiller, is the first project that builds a utility bridge between NFTs and the metaverse and a legacy industry. Every Meta Brew Society NFT grants you in real life utility of up to 300 cans of free craft beer per year in perpetuity. You also get voting rights on business decisions and access to exclusive brewing classes and beer tastings. Meta Brew Society is preparing to buy a real brewery from the NFT drop, where they deliver product innovations like high protein or smoked beers. They are also creating iconic beer shops in a digital twin of the Meta Brew Society in the metaverse. The NFT revolution of the beer industry happens now, and you can be part of it. First of all, thank you so much for being here. Roy, Zeneca, so why don't we start with that name? Tell me about where did the Zeneca come from? I always think of you as being very zen. Does that have something to do with that?
Yeah, I would say that's part of it. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. All right, so to the name, when I created my Twitter account in March 2021, I was coming up with a name, a pseudonymous identity. I think a lot of people in Web3 have like their pseudonyms. And I just tried to think about, what sort of words, names, people came to mind. And my favorite, I'm a big fan of Stoic philosophy, and my favorite philosopher is Seneca. So Zeneca with an S. And so that was just the first thing that came to mind. And then I didn't want to just straight up copy that. And so I was like, well, how can I change it a little bit? And then I'm also a fan of like Buddhism and like being a bit Zen and thinking about that. And so I just merged the two together. Zeneca came up, and then I was 33 years old at the time. And so I went Zeneca 33. That's where the screen name came from.
That's really cool. So tell me about that philosophy a little bit, because, I feel like in the NFT space, we talk too much about NFTs and not enough about other things. For me, I think that I see NFTs as a means to an end, not an end in themselves. I see them as a technology and as a tool to spread great ideas and great business models, knowledge, all that stuff. So tell me a little bit about your life philosophy. Who is Zeneca as a person, as a philosopher?
Yeah, wow. That is a big question. I would say, so I started reading literature around Stoicism and a little bit Buddhism and various other philosophies around 2015, 2016, so 6-7 years ago. And it just immediately resonated with me because I think I had always sort of had like an ilk in that direction. And so I guess in a nutshell, the parts of Stoicism that resonate with me are like focusing and understanding that there are certain things within our control in life and certain things not within our control. And very often we find ourselves being upset, emotional, angry due to things that are outside of our control. And it can be difficult to reconcile because by nature and by the fact that they are outside of our control, there's nothing we can do about it. And we can feel helpless and then anxious and then all sorts of negative emotions. And then I think making that conscious recognition that, all right, well, that was not in our control. In the markets crash, we could not have seen that. Like we didn't know about that, et cetera, et cetera. It's raining today and we had a big picnic planned and, that's not really in our control. The forecast said it was sunny and it changed, et cetera. So I think by nature, a lot of people's first reaction is, sadness or anger or whatever, feeling upset. But I think with Stoicism, it sort of like teaches you or directs you to understand what's within your control and what's out of your control and align your emotions more strictly with what is in your control. And basically the only thing that is actually in our control are our thoughts, our mind, and so I guess by long story short, like we get to decide how we react to any situation. Like that things will happen to us all the time in the world around us. And that is not in our control. What's in our control is our reaction to it. And so just trying to be grateful, thankful, content, okay, accepting, etc., of whatever comes my way, our way in life, whether it's in the NFT space. And I think that it's particularly useful in the NFT space because there's a lot of stuff happening outside of our control all the time that has like financial impacts on our lives and emotional impacts. But even outside, like if I'm going to catch a bus and I just miss the bus, instead of being upset, I'll be like, okay, well, it happened. Can't change the past. Past is not in my control. What can I do now? I could be upset or I could be happy. I could content. I could focus on something else. So that sort of period, I think 2015 to 2017, 2018, I read a lot of stuff and really sort of solidified that. I guess I put words to a mindset that I always in the back of my mind understood a little bit of, but really firmed it up. And ever since then, it's just sort of been a running theme in my head to approach life with those things in mind.
That's so cool. So I'm originally from Iran. So Persian poetry is something that is like, there's a lot of Persian poetry that's very much in line with what you are talking about. I'm a big fan of Rumi. Actually, my cat is called Rumi. And, and there's this incredible Persian poem that essentially basically what he's saying is that I'm like a hole in the flute. The music comes through me, meaning that I'm not creating the music. I'm just, I'm just a vessel for the music to come through me. And I wake up every morning thinking of my life in that term, and when you think of it like that, that you are here for an experience to unfold and you are experiencing that, right? Then you kind of stop having an opinion about everything. For example, we were shortlisted to receive investment from a big bank and it didn't go through. I think they were not yet ready to invest in a Web3 oriented kind of platform. And I was quite upset because, they are also a client. And I was like, I really felt like this would have been a really good partnership. And then I reminded myself, there's no point in being upset, like, who knows, maybe this is for the best. And literally 2 or 3 days later, I was talking to one of the Moonbirds on Twitter, who then also bought one of the ZenCademy NFTs. So I was talking to him on Twitter, and the way it worked out was like, basically, I just sent him a message and said, hey, look at our NFTs, this is what we're building. And he responded saying, oh, this is so cool. And, what are you doing? And I explained, I said, well, we've raised this much money, we're doing this, and I'm closing our round. And he was like, oh, how much money do you need to close your round? And I was like, 300,000 pounds. And he was like, let's talk. And now he is investing in the platform and he's like coming to London, and it's just really interesting and actually a much better deal to what it would have been if we had gone with the bank and all that stuff. So you never know. And I think that as we go through this a constant transformation in this age of technological advancement and exponential age, the less we have opinions about things and just get on with them, it's better. Because you think about something like Web3, like it's a big learning curve. It's quite a steep learning curve. And I see so many people that give up just because they're like, this is too hard, right? Where I'm like, if you stop complaining and you use that time to actually create your wallet, you would be like 10 steps ahead of everybody now, right? So do you see that in the people around you, because you're such a prolific person in this space? Do people tell you about their frustrations, and how do you help them stay calm and like carry on?
Yeah, I do hear obviously reasonable about people who are frustrated, upset, they're going through a tough time in this space. And yes, people do tend to reach out to me, I guess, because perhaps of my writings or my approach to the space, and they sort of ask for advice. And I think zoom out, honestly, is one thing that I tell people a lot, because I think giving perspective is extremely important. And if it's whether it's financial minded and the market is down 20%, 50%, when you do zoom out and look at the price of Bitcoin since inception, or Ethereum, or the stock market, and you see that, all right, it's down a bit, but when you, in the grand scheme of things, we're up so much and it's likely to continue, but who knows, maybe it doesn't. And then it's sort of about, I really think a perspective is really important. So it's, all right, things might be bad in one area, but do you have a family? Do you have a pet that you can hug? Do you have your health? And maybe they have none of these things. And then do you have a roof over your head? Maybe not, maybe not. All right, what do you have? You have your thoughts. All right, so you can, again, come back. You are within the capacity to think, and that is miracle of life, for lack of a better word, just the fact that we're alive, and how precious life is, and just trying to appreciate that. And it can be difficult when you're in the thick of it, and it doesn't really help necessarily always to hear that. That's why I just try and tell people to breathe, zoom out, and then we talk through it. And honestly, just usually talking, or rather listening on my end, a lot of people just want to talk, and so just being there to listen and then give a couple of nuggets, usually I think is helpful. Yeah, that's my approach generally.
Definitely. What was your upbringing like? Like, did you have a sheltered life? Did you grow up with money, or was it like something that you made? Because I know that you come from a poker background, and for somebody who comes from a poker background, to be able to be so zen about money and loss, and surely there must have been some losses as well, right, along the way. I come from a very underprivileged background. Like, if you see a picture of where I grew up, you would never believe where I am now. Now I have got 17 people working in my 2 companies, and we work with some of the best brands, like including Steinway pianos. They've been our client for 6 years. So I come from a place where I had nothing to lose. And that's why even the worst thing that happens to me, if I lose everything, I'm still better than what I was before, because at least I've had that experience of going from having nothing to having everything. So what was your background upbringing?
Yeah, I would say I definitely had a sheltered upbringing and a fortunate upbringing. But I mean, I never had to worry about food or money or anything. My parents fortunately provided really well for me. They though struggled, and like they had adversity in their lives. So I think they really instilled in me and my brother and sister like the value of money, and like really just not taking money for granted. A dollar saved is a dollar earned, waste not, want not, all these types of concepts. So yeah, I mean, my parents, they moved from India in the 70s, I believe, to actually Germany for a few years because my dad got a job there, and then to Australia, a small mining town in northern Australia. I think it's just a population of a few thousand people, which is where I was born. And so the first 5-6 years of my life was a small country town. I mean, there were no fast food restaurants, there were no traffic lights. It was really small. Just that was like, I guess, the first 6 years of my life. And then we moved to Brisbane, in Queensland in Australia, and that's where I grew up and did most of my schooling and made friends. And yeah, again, my parents provided a really good, comfortable life, where I didn't have to worry about money, but I was also not really handed everything on a silver platter or anything per se. And by the time when I was 17, 18, that's when I started playing poker, and I was largely independent from then. Like, not about, I had the fortunate aspect of knowing that, if things really went awful, I could go back home and that they would support me and had the means to support me. But I was, playing poker, winning money, losing money, feeling all of it, feeling terrible when I lost. I felt very independent, and that I think really helped me, because I did that for about 15 years. I made lots of money, and then I lost all of it, and then I did it again, and then lost it all again, and a few times, and that really helps you have that resilience. I think that's really is helpful in the crypto and Web3 and NFT space, because swings are like, the variance is enormous. And as we've seen over the last month, prices have really crashed, not just in crypto, tech stocks and everything is going to hell a bit. But yeah, that was sort of like, in a nutshell, my upbringing and past.
Well, I hope you don't mind that I ask these questions. The reason is that you do so many interviews about NFTs that I think people have heard a lot of the things you have to say about NFTs, and we are going to get to them. But I wanted our audience to see the human side of you, and like a little bit of getting to know you as a person, and for me to get to know you as a person. So this was really helpful. Now, I want to ask you something about this is something that I get asked quite a lot, and I want to know your opinion. Web3 and the NFT space, do you see it as a democratizing force, or do you see it as a force of actually increasing the divide between the haves and have-nots? And do you see it as like actually magnifying that? And actually, I gave a TED talk where I talked about the next generation of democracy is being built on the next generation of the internet. Are you ready for it? But I did say at the end of that talk that the thing about the speed of technological advancements is that everything gets magnified. So if you don't get on board, you will be left behind. And when you are left behind, it's going to be a lot harder. I see some of our members, they're like, like I'm earning like $3,000-$4,000 a month. How do you expect me to buy something that's like several ETH, to get into these communities, to get access to those opportunities? What would you say to them?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I guess to address the part about me buying ETH early and then having that to get into these projects. While I think the first time I bought ETH, it was around $200, 2016, 2017. I sort of held it all the way up to 1,500, 2,000, and then it crashed down, and I sort of rid that whole wave. And then when 2021 came along, I had about 20 ETH sitting in a wallet. So that was, not insignificant. But I wouldn't say that I had like a huge pile of money to put into ETH. Like early last year, my net worth might have been like $100,000. At 32, 33 years old, that's not a fortune. That's not like, maybe it was 200,000, 150. It was like, all right, it was obviously, I was privileged to have that amount of money and have a roof over my head and stuff, but I didn't come into the year with like millions and millions, or like 1,000 ETH or something. And then I was just fortunate to buy the right projects and flip and trade, and obviously right time. It was very lucky to be in the market at that time, and things went well. In terms of like the bigger question, is Web3 democratizing? I would say yes, definitely. I feel like it is. It opens a lot more opportunities for creators, especially people from parts of the world that may not have access and opportunities that someone say in the United States or Europe might have. And we see that with artists all the time, where an artist from say Thailand. Case in point, this banner behind me. This was a Thai artist who I found on Twitter, who had just started creating work. His name is Pondering, and then releasing it as NFTs, and people found it and liked it and started paying good money for it, and now he's got a whole life and career out of it, and there's many stories like that. I will say though that obviously there is a large degree of accumulation of wealth in like a small percentage of people. The whales, the VCs are entering Web3 for sure and taking a large percentage of money. That's a fact. That's inevitable. The way I always answer this question actually is just paraphrasing Winston Churchill, so I'll say Web3, blockchain, crypto, this economy, it's the worst possible economy and system except for everything else. So just like democracy is the worst form of government except for everything else, I think obviously there are flaws and there are issues, and yes, the rich will get richer and wealthier, but I think the opportunities that are becoming available for new participants they're increasing, and so that alone gives me hope, and I think we're moving in the right direction, even though it's yeah, you can still get left behind. It's not WAGMI. Everyone is not going to win, but there are more opportunities for those willing to sort of work and capitalize on them.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like early days of social media. Like, for example, I was quite early in LinkedIn. When LinkedIn went from being just a place to find jobs to being a social media, I was there at that time. My videos were getting like hundreds of thousands, which was a lot for LinkedIn. And then I became a LinkedIn top voice 3 years in a row, and I built a presence and audience there. So in a similar way, people who were early to Instagram, they became Instagram influencers. People who were early to YouTube, they built an audience. So I would say to people that in my experience, Web3 is democratizing because you don't need as big of an audience. Like if you are somebody who has something of value to give to a number of people, really, like, look at most of the NFT communities, like 10,000, the 10,000, if 10,000 people are willing, or even 100 people are willing to buy your project, and then you give those 100 people a lot of value, then it goes from there, and you can build a living from it, and you can build, a business from it. So it is democratizing. And it's like anything else, being early does matter. This is the nature of technology. Technology is moving so fast. If you can understand it, and if you can get on board with it, I always give this example of, when the pandemic happened, during the first 2 weeks of pandemic, the lockdowns, and Netflix added 20 something million people to their audience. And that meant that there were 20 million new people in the space, that said, oh, I'm getting paid to sit home and not work, so I'm going to sit down and watch Netflix. Precisely at that time, I started building a business, and I haven't watched a single Netflix series. I have not watched a single film or anything like that for 2.5 years now, because I've been building this thing, right? I cut down all of my entertainment, and I focused on this thing. I've been working on it 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I think that it's fair to say that I deserve to win the wins that I've had, right? So it's a decision that you make at the end of the day. I'm not saying that everybody who is not winning is whining necessarily, but a lot of times, Joe Rogan has got this really good thing. He's like, there's a lot of people who are complaining, but there's not a lot of people who are actually putting effort. It does take effort, like anything else.
No, it truly does.
Okay, so let's say that somebody hears this and they're like, okay, from tomorrow, or from today, I'm going to go in, I'm going to learn about Web3. And let's say the person says, I don't have a lot of money, but I want to get started. Where do you think they should start? What's the hottest area? What's the low-hanging fruit in the Web3 space right now where people can start?
I mean, in terms of educating yourself and getting to know the space better, honestly, YouTube, Twitter, just Google, just start. Like, I remember when I first got into the space properly early last year, I recognized Web3, this creative economy, this thing is big. I want to really pivot away from poker and dedicate all my time to it, and understanding. And the learning curve is so steep. So I know that it's difficult because there's so much to learn, like setting up MetaMask and knowing what gas is. And I sat down one day and I wrote a list of about 15 or 20 words or phrases that I just heard, in articles or just people talking about, that I had no idea what it was, like liquidity pool or layer twos or Solana. As I'd heard these, but I was like, I don't know what it is. And then so I just went through them one by one over the course of a week or two, and I Googled, and then I read articles, and then I watched videos, and then I did more and more. And that's just gets you that base level of understanding. And I think that, it doesn't cost anything. It's, other than time. And, you might not get 100% accurate, up-to-date, perfect information, but you start understanding the lingo, the vernacular, you start understanding the different areas in the space, and you hear other things, and then it just begins. You just have to start. That's the hardest part. It's starting. And then as you just keep doing that, as time goes on, follow people on Twitter. Just honestly, it takes a lot of time because there is so much to learn. And I had someone ask me a couple of months ago, like they were asking me what are like the one or two questions that sort of all beginners come to me and ask me about when they're getting into NFTs and crypto. And I sat and I thought for about 10 seconds, and I couldn't come up with a couple, because the reality is, if there were just a couple of questions that everyone was asking, this would be easy. We could just put a website saying, this is FAQ into crypto, read these, and then you're done. The reality is, everyone has different questions, and there's 50 to 100 questions that you want answers to, and that's like how steep the learning curve is. And YouTube, Twitter, Google, and then asking questions is honestly the best thing. And by and large, people in the space are so happy to answer questions and help you, because it wasn't that long ago that we were in the same position trying to figure it out. And so just jump in, talk to people, ask questions, read, watch videos, and then take it from there.
Yeah, no, so that's super helpful. So on our platform, I've tried to think about like my journey when I first started. How did I come across all of these different kinds of pieces of information, and then distilled it down to where does one start? And I would say that I tell people, look, if you understand the ethos of Web3, it's really about ownership. So the key to your ownership is your wallet. So the first thing to learn about is what is a wallet? If you can understand that, that's going to be a key point.
Yeah.
You can think of it as being the window to Web3. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I think the way you put it was really excellent, because it's relatively easy to set up a wallet, but a lot of people set it up without understanding what it means to like where do your assets exist? Do they exist in your MetaMask pop-up browser? Are they on your computer? Are they on OpenSea? No, they're on the blockchain.
Yes.
And your wallet just sort of directs or says who owns it and gives you the access to it. And like getting through that is, yeah, I agree. Like understanding how it works is probably the most important first step. And it's difficult. Like it's hard to wrap your head around, because we're not used to this sort of system of like dealing with goods and things like on a public blockchain ledger. It's a new technology, so it takes a while to wrap your head around, but it's so absolutely worth figuring it out.
So you said that you literally came into this space like 18 months ago?
So I dabbled like in 2016, 2017. I bought a little bit of ETH and then some random altcoins, but I never really like fully got in. I didn't fully understand it. It was just that everyone was talking about it. Like at poker tables, people were talking about it. And so I bought in. And again, when the bear market hit, I was like, all right, I didn't have that conviction to stick around and build or invest more. I just sort of left and went back to reality. Like even back then, I didn't fully understand how wallets worked or ownership truly worked or smart contracts. It was all very theoretical in a lot of ways as well. And then, yeah, early last year, so around February, March 2021 is when I sort of got back in. And that's when I would say I properly started dedicating time to learning and understanding. And it was, several months of really steep learning curve. And then even today, I'm learning things all the time. There's so much that I don't know about. No one can know. There's just too much new stuff happening in every direction at all times. Yeah. It's impossible to stay on top of.
Yeah. So, and now you are essentially one of the most respected influencers in this space. You've got around 300,000 people following you on Twitter. Like I have not heard a single person that doesn't know about you in this space, that doesn't respect you. Everybody's like, whenever I say to people Zeneca, they're like, oh yeah, he's an amazing person, and they all respect you. Can you tell me a little bit about how that journey happened? Would you say that you're an extrovert? Like you don't come across as an extrovert.
No, I'm definitely introverted. And I'm not a fan of social media either. So the fact that I've come here, it's beyond, like I used to use Twitter a little bit back when I was a poker player, but I hadn't used it for 5 years. I deactivated my Facebook account a few years ago. I stopped using Instagram. But I realized that getting into NFTs and crypto and NFT specifically, Twitter and Discord are two things that are basically mandatory to understand, because that's just where so much conversation happens, and where people learn about projects and discuss them. And so I realized, well, if I really want to do this right and understand and be part of this space and capitalize on various opportunities, I need to use these platforms. So yeah, I started my Twitter account March last year as basically just a way to follow people and try and find new projects and see about what's happening in the space. I mean, I was posting a little bit, but a lot of it was like retweeting giveaways, and just occasionally I'd write a couple of posts or a thread, and it wouldn't get that much traction, and as what happens. And then in around May, June, I think is when it all started really taking off. One thing is I got my Bored Apes in, I think, mid to late May or something. So about a month after mint. And I got them because, everyone on Twitter was talking about them. You'd see them everywhere, see derivatives. And honestly, I just felt FOMO, and I was like, well, okay, I want to be part of this. And I remember I had to I didn't have enough. I could buy one, I think. But so I have 3 now that I all bought on secondary for 0.5 to 0.7, but I had to really scramble to get that ETH together, because I had to deposit Australian dollars into exchange and transfer that. But the FOMO was that real, and the community seemed that strong. So as soon as I changed my PFP and started engaging with that community, that helped me get from a couple hundred followers to 1,000 or something. And you don't need an ape to do that. You can be part of any NFT community. We'll help each other and follow each other. And but obviously, 1,000 is great, but to get to where I am now, it's just absurd. And then I think in June is when I launched my newsletter, which is sort of long form written content on. Honestly, it started out more project specific, and then over time it's evolved into more big picture concepts and less specific projects. And the reason I started it was because I've always enjoyed writing, and I feel like I learn more myself when I write and have to explain something than anything else. So I thought, well, if I force myself to write, which I enjoy, and force myself to research rather and understand these topics, so I'm portraying them accurately, then I'll understand them better. And that's basically how it started. And I think there just wasn't much content about NFTs at all back then. So it's just sort of started spreading, and people were sharing it, and that was starting to pick up some traction, and more people were sort of becoming aware of my content. And again, around that same time, June, is when I started posting on Twitter these daily stats updates of floor prices of PFP projects mostly. And back then there were no websites that tracked floor prices. OpenSea didn't even track the floor price of projects. You had to manually go in and sort by low to high. OpenSea didn't even automatically sort by low to high. You had to go and do that. So it was very difficult back then to find the floor price of the project, and people really wanted to know the floor prices. And so I was actually tracking it myself. And then one day a friend said, well, I wonder if there was a tool. And I was like, hey, I have that. So I shared that with my friend, and they were really excited. So I tweeted it out, and then just the reception was incredible. Everyone was like, wow, this is amazing. So I did it the next day, and then the next day. And then I did it every single day for about 6-7 months, basically. And, that really, I credit the growth of my Twitter account very largely to that, because it was something that everyone in the space wanted. No one else was really doing, and there were no other resources to do it. So every day I would post it. I would post the stats, and I'd add my analysis of it, and my thoughts on the market, and just everyone would share, retweet. And it was just right place, right time, right content with very little competition. And so as the entire NFT space is blowing up, we're talking June, July, August last year, the amount of people entering was just, it went parabolic. It seemed like everyone was entering the space, and then following me as well. People would join Twitter, people who do you follow on Twitter? And then there's a list of people, and my name was usually in there. So then that just propelled it, and it was 20, 30, 40,000 people following every single month for the last half of last year. And then, somewhere along the way, I also started a podcast with my friend Jamie, and now I have a second one, and my YouTube channel, and just kept creating content and Discord server and my own project. And but yeah, I mean, to begin with, the first, say, 5, 10, 20K, that came from my newsletter, and I think these Twitter daily stats, and just being active on Twitter and posting threads. And
it's that's so fascinating, because look, it goes back to, again, being at the right place at the right time, being early. This whole concept of saving people time, this is something that people will always pay for. If you can buy people time, they will pay for it, right? So if you can create, whether it's content, whether it's a new product, right now the NFT space is still very, very inefficient. There's still so many issues. Lots of things have been made better, but you can think of something like, for example, pre-mint, right? You can that website pre-mint, it's God, that's so helpful. So they thought about like, this is a problem that people have, we can solve this problem for them. So there are so many opportunities like that. So if somebody says, I want to come into the space and I want to solve problems and build businesses, what are some of the problems that you can think of that maybe some entrepreneurs listening to this podcast now, that they can take away and say, look, hey, this is a great opportunity? So as somebody who really is a prolific person in this space, what are some of the opportunities that you see in the space that new people coming in could leverage?
That's a really good question. So there are a bunch of problems that I think people can fix, but I know people are already working on them. But so they might not be the best opportunity, but I'll go through a few of them because these are pain points and maybe just gives people an idea of the types of things that people are looking for. So one is so this issue where when you have an NFT and you need to verify ownership of it, often you have to sign a transaction in MetaMask with the wallet that holds that NFT. And if that NFT is very valuable for a Moonbirds, for example, or a Bored Ape, you risk signing a malicious transaction because it's sometimes ambiguous what you're signing, and a lot of people, the level of sophistication isn't there, and so people are getting scammed all the time. And so this idea that you can have like a proxy wallet, like a second wallet, a burner wallet that is linked to your main wallet via some sort of, whether it's a ghost token or some verification system, you say, all right, because I control wallet A's and B, wallet A has the assets, I want to use wallet B to verify ownership of it. And I think that's just something like I've been talking about for 8 months, and I think that it hasn't really come out yet, but we're pretty close, I think, to having that feature available and being mainstream, I think, in the next couple of months. Another thing, all right, this one I don't really think exists yet. And I don't know how profitable it would be, but it's something that, again, I've been talking about for 8 months, is just an NFT Wikipedia. Like, that's just a place where you can go and just type in a project name, find out all the information about it, whether it's an old project, a coming up project, a historical project, whether, all right, it minted out and then the founder's rug pulled, or, it minted out and you can click on the founder's name and say, what other projects have they worked on? And really just go through that entire history. And maybe there's more, just an NFT Wikipedia is basically something that I would love.
Yeah. You know what? One of the things that I noticed is that nobody explained this to me when I got into NFTs. And it was only after I bought a number of NFTs, was that each NFT has got different cycles of releases, right? Like drops, right? That, like, you had Bored Ape, then you had Mutant, then you had, I can't actually remember. I don't know if the dogs, the kennel club.
Dogs first, then mutants.
And then mutant, yeah. And usually as you go through these, the ones that come later with the larger number, they are usually like cheaper. And then it means that they usually give you less upside than having the original one. So one of the things that people don't understand is, like, depending on where in the cycle of their drops you come in, you may not get the same upside. So for example, buying a Bored Ape now, you're not going to get the same upside as if you bought the Bored Ape before the mutants, before, the other side, all that stuff, right? So like, I can buy a Bored Ape now, it will only give me the status, but I don't get all of the other things that would have come with it. So this is very similar to being an angel investor and like knowing where in the cycle of the company you are coming in, right? And so having a Wikipedia, NFTpedia, kind of thing. Why don't we do it? Let's do it. Shall we do it? Let's just do it.
I wanted to do it. I've had 2 or 3 teams together, like brainstorming, getting the idea out there, and then like I don't have enough time to dedicate fully to it, so I need other people to help it, and then it just didn't get off the ground.
Because we have members of our platform who are really looking for something to get their teeth into. I'm going to put it out there. Maybe this will be a women-led, initiative, right?
I think the Hug project is sort of doing something fairly similar. I don't know if it's comprehensive, but they have a lot of people evaluating a lot of projects and getting basic information together. But maybe working with
AI based. I think this needs to be
AI based would be way better than
Yeah, and our CTO is a AI architect, and I can talk to her. She, this is such a good idea, so like, yes. So for that NFTpedia to know We all even gave it a name, right? NFTpedia.
Yeah, NFTpedia.
For that NFTpedia, to whoever takes this idea, I want some credit. But for that to also tell people where we are in the cycle, because like people come to me and say, like actually today I got a message from one of our members saying that is this still a good time to buy into a Moonbird? And I'm like, oh my God, it's such a difficult. I feel so worried about answering that question because I remember I really thought when World of Women was sitting at around 8 ETH, I thought that this was a good entry. And now it's sitting around 4 ETH, right? Which actually brings me to, let's talk about this. What's your feeling about women-led projects and why they are not really taking off? And I would like to be able to have a very open conversation about it. And we are hopefully going to do this conversation on our Twitter spaces as well. In my opinion, World of Women should be sitting around 40 to 50 ETH right now, and BFF should be sitting around 4 to 5 ETH right now. I believe that Boss Beauties should be around 5 to 6 ETH, if not more. 7, 8 ETH. These are like some of the major ones that I can think of. Like, why are they not taking off? What's the thing that's holding them back?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult question. I think that there's no 100% clear answer, and there's probably a lot of factors at play. But I would say one probable reason is just the demographic breakdown of the market participants in the NFT space. It's very male centric, and it has been historically. And especially if you look at sort of, who was into crypto 10 years ago or earlier, I think the skew was male centric, and then the distribution of wealth has been, heavily skewed towards those who were earliest, right? And who bought ETH early. And I think, if that was primarily men, and then they have most of the money now, and maybe women focused projects aren't as appealing to them for whatever reason as, say, other projects. And then I guess there's just less money and less demand. And then if you add the fact that there's some excellent, I love all the projects you just mentioned, but they're in a way sort of competing with each other because they're now in this sort of bucket of sort of they're tied together and labeled as women-led or women projects. Which it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, certain people will support them and want to support them more because of that. But then if that's a defining factor or feature of what they are, then they sort of get pitted against or valued against the other ones. And if there isn't enough demand, then they're sort of, again, competing against each other for whatever. I agree with most of what you said in terms of valuations. I certainly think that those projects should be valued a lot higher. Crypto Coven is another one that I'm a massive fan of, and really, those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think I agree with all of that. It goes back to, before I started FemPeak, I ran a think tank for women in business and technology to look at why women were not in the top tier of any field. So if you think about, in this case, we're talking about money and finance and tech, but actually, if you think about it, even in areas that are historically female domains, at least known as female domains, like cooking and sewing, and dancing, music, maybe to less degree, but like things like, the highest paid ballet dancers are male, the highest paid chefs are male, the highest paid clothes designers are male, even the highest paid high heel shoes designer, Louboutin is male. So it goes deep. And I looked at, what are the reasons for this? And we found that it comes down to 6 factors. And those factors are a shortfall in confidence, tech skills, financial literacy, entrepreneurship skills, and women's health issues, and family and relationship support. These are like all the things that kind of work in conjunction with each other, that they work in parallel. So women often suffer more from things like imposter syndrome, lack of confidence, but that lack of confidence a lot of times comes from their lack of family support, relationship. And, I always talk about this, that I was interested in and learned everything about blockchain technology since 2018 or even 17. But I didn't buy because I was in a relationship where my partner didn't approve of blockchain technology and it was really against it. So that affected my confidence to be able to actually go in and buy and actually get involved in it. And it wasn't until after my breakup in late 2019 and then later on, then it took me another year of like overcoming, getting over that before I actually started buying crypto. So that's a very good example of, there are many, many women who, even if they make their own money, when it comes to spending their money, they do care about what their partners say, and they do care about what the people around them say. And I see myself as one of the most self-centric people that I know. And even I was affected by, the opinion of my ex-partner. So this is a very good example. Another thing is like, I made the hard choice of not having children because I knew that I don't have the support. I have no family in the UK. I came here by myself. I taught myself English. I had to pay for my own education. I didn't have the support. I could see that if I had children, there's no way I could build a career the way that I wanted to build. So I decided not to have children. So, there's that aspect of it. That's why we are rebranding FemPeak. And maybe by the time people listen to this, it will have been already rebranded, because really we need to build allyship. Like there's no such thing as women's issues. Women's issues is part of social issues. Like we all talk about inclusivity, but you can't be inclusive if women are still facing those 6 issues that I mentioned. Even think about something like women's health. The majority of research that has been done in medicine has been done on male mice, even the type of, medicine that we are developing, most of the time, they don't have as many female, whether it's animal subjects or whether human subjects, because women have got cycles, and that makes things less predictable. So we have literally gone through a millennia of dismissing a whole part of the population because they are more complex. And as a result, they fall back, right? And we really need men to be part of that conversation to change that, if we are serious about changing it. As a result of that, women make less money. And because they make less money, they spend less money. At the end of the day, when it comes to minting a project that's 2.5 ETH or whatever, you either have it or you don't have it. So with all of that in mind, how do you think we can overcome that? Let me ask you this question. What percentage of people in ZenCademy, the top tier, what percentage are women who have bought that?
It's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I would say, though, it is around 10%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's still good, right?
Yeah. I think between the 3 and even just general ZenCademy, we found that the percentage of women members we have is higher than the wider NFT space. And I'm obviously happy about that. I know that it's a lot worse in certain other projects.
Okay. So maybe like just as we come towards the end of this, one of the things that people often ask me, people come into this space and like they watch 2 videos or join 2 sessions. And then the third one is like, how do I build my own NFT project? There's the mechanics of it, but most of the time people don't understand what goes into having a successful NFT project. So what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, the number one thing I always say is think about why you want to launch an NFT project in the first place. Like you said, a lot of people get in, they look at a couple of things and they just jump to, oh, I want to launch one. And then maybe they start looking at the technicals and like, how do I do the contracts and find the art? And then they may have skipped the step, or they've really rushed over like why they want to launch it. And it could just be, I want to raise a bunch of money. I want to make money. It could be that, but there's a lot of different other reasons. It could be, I want to create a brand. I want to make a game. I want to, fund a book or a movie or an animated show. I want to raise money for charity. I want to raise money for a good cause, a social good cause, and help fight deforestation or climate change or the coral reefs, or there's so many issues that there's so many different reasons, but I think most people don't think about that. So I think really take a good amount of time and like think about why you want to launch an NFT project. Think about whether the thing that you want to do, whether NFTs are the right fit for that. Like, I don't think everything should be an NFT just because it's cool technology. Obviously, I think it's cool technology, but there are a lot of things that are better off without the NFTs, especially this early. Like, I think maybe in 5-10 years, things that are not NFT-fied now will be in the future. But just really thinking about, I always go back to this story. I was talking to a dentist about 6 months ago who was actually thinking of joining the 333 club, and we're just chatting about it, and I asked him what his plans were, and he was like, well, I've got my dental clinic, and I want to release an NFT which it gives like free cleanings every 6 months for life or something like that. And I said, it's a cool idea, But if you draw a Venn diagram of like people who live within 30 minutes of your clinic and then might come and then who are into NFTs and might pay for this, that you'd be lucky to find one person. And so I said, maybe in 5-10 years when NFTs are really mainstream, this would be great. And I could see that. I could see NFTs for coffee loyalty cards, movie rewards, et cetera, et cetera. But right now, it might not be the best idea to pursue that if you are relying on a very wide stream adoption. So yeah, just again, to answer your question, think about why you think really hard about why.
Yeah, I can definitely see the value in, let's say, for example, if you are a hairdresser, right? And you can say in a year, this is the number, the capacity that I have. I'm going to release this many NFTs and like only people who have that NFT will, that I will serve them, right? Like something, but that's when it's mass adopted and like it's everywhere. Awesome. Well, this has been a fascinating topic. There's so many other things that you are already covering on a really excellent podcast with Carly Riley that I'm a big fan of. So I didn't want to cover the things that you already covered with her. So like the typical kind of like what's going on in the market, because you already covered that. So I tell people about that podcast all the time. I think it's I think Carly is fantastic, and I really hope to have her on the podcast at some point. And actually, if you could make an introduction, I absolutely would really love to. I think she is excellent. I really, really love that show. Because of that show, I bought into Moonbirds, and you've made me a lot of money.
Amazing. I will make that intro. I think it works both ways. She would probably love to have you on as well.
I would love to talk to her and have her on the podcast as well. So I really appreciate your time. I know you have a hard stop today, and I'm part of the 333 club, so we are in touch, and we will take it from there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Zeneca. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at Zeneca_33. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to it on Apple, Spotify, or any other one of your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to give it a 5-star rating and write a review. The full interviews are also available on my YouTube channel, The Somi Arian Show.